Hi, I'm Tia,
And I'm Toni.
and this is Emotions Unscripted. So, we are on to another week. Um, you want to start off and give a little background on how your week went?
Sure. This weekend, I have really prioritized my self care and just utilizing, some PTO days. So definitely balanced a lot of rest with action. So I'm really feeling refreshed. How about you? How was your week?
I've been doing a lot of that, coming off the chaos of like the past like couple of months, and I've been putting into place the same kind of things. But when I was sitting down, I was thinking about um, the podcast and what we would talk about and what our topics were for this week. I started thinking about like how in the midst of all the chaos and in the past weeks and trying to recharge is that I had noticed like a big disconnect from my body. And I would say it was like probably halfway through, or maybe it was towards like the beginning of last month, I had got a speeding ticket. And I haven't had a speeding ticket since I was pregnant with my last child. That's how I remember it. And so that was easily like 7 years ago. And so that means that I'm pretty aware of my surroundings. I'm pretty alert when I'm driving. But I was just on my way to my office and I'm just driving and driving and driving. And like this cop pulls out into the road and like signals for me to come into the parking lot. And I was like, what the hell? Because like this path that I drive this all the time. These cops always sit out there catching people speeding because it's right after where the speed limit drops. And so before it's like a 50, 55, and then it drops down to a 40 real quick. And so they sit like right after that in this little shopping strip to be able to catch people. They've always been there. I've lived in this area like forever. And so I know that they're there. And I was like, how did I get caught by this cop? And it's funny because I remember like he comes up and he was like asking me about, am I in a hurry to go somewhere? And I'm just thinking, I was like, no, I'm not. I was actually early and I was like, how did this happen? So while he's writing at my ticket, I'm spinning in my head. I was like, how did this happen? And it was then that I realized that I was like, you're not connected. I was like, your body is in this kind of autopilot mode where you're just going. So your body knows how to drive a car, it knows the direction to your office, and so it's just doing what's normal. And usually it's your brain that's paying attention to the speed, paying attention to where you are, those types of things. And mine was off in La La Land. And I was like, Tia, it is time for you to kind of check in with yourself. And I remember like driving off from that and I just burst out crying. And I'm like just sobbing and I'm like yelling like to myself, like, I hate this. I don't know what's going on. I was just like, all this like frustrations were coming out. And I was like, look at all those emotions that you've been pushing down into your body. And now when you're recognizing that you've been doing it, it's like, it's like coming up and exploding. And so that was like 5 minutes while I'm still driving because my body still knows how to drive. While I'm just like sitting here, and I was like, people probably think I'm crazy because I'm just sitting here like yelling it to my own little self and crying and things like that. But I was releasing all of that, and I was getting all of that tension out of my body. And then afterwards, I felt so much better. But it was because that I was like disconnected. I didn't even realize what was going on in my body. I didn't even realize that I had been pushing this stuff down over and over. And my body was like, something's wrong, but we're going to keep on operating in this consistency because you have to function. And it makes me also think about when I used to run marathons and how your body kind of goes into autopilot too during that, where it's just like we're going and going, and then it's like as you're getting towards those last miles, usually around like I always say I hated mile 23. That was like the worst mile. That's when all the emotions start coming out, and you're like, why am I doing this? This is so crazy. But what also happens is that our body will start like shutting down systems in order for us to be able to push through that last part of the marathon too. And one of the things that I've always heard people ask about is like the foil blankets that they get at the end of the marathon. And they're like, well, what is that about? And I didn't know what that was about either until I run a marathon. It's freaking hot outside, but they're wrapping you in this blanket because by the time you hit that finish line, your body is shivering because what your body has done is like, I don't know what you're doing. All I know is that we're in panic mode here. The body's in panic mode here, and it's like, okay, I have to keep the body talking. I have to keep your heart beating. I have to keep your organs functioning as they're supposed to. I got to make sure that your lungs are doing what you're supposed to do, so you can still breathe. And so, what are these systems that I can shut down in order for you to cross this finish line? And so one of the things they shut down is like your body's ability to like to regulate your body temperature. And so once you cross that finish line, that's when like the blankets come on to kind of help you to re-regulate your body systems. And so it's so interesting, like the things that our body can do by itself and the things our mind can do by itself. But then we think about when we realign those, like the power that's in having those things connected.
Yeah, for sure. Because it makes me think about like how much pressure do we truly put on our bodies and our minds and not checking in with ourselves, checking in just something small to see what we need. Are we hungry? Do we need a snack? Just really getting that information from our bodies from what we truly need.
Yeah. And it makes me, when you were saying the whole checking in with like, ooh, do we need a snack? And I think a lot of times we don't check in to say, do I need a snack? Or am I cold? Or what am I needing in these moments to be kind of okay? We kind of just keep on pushing and push those signals off to the side. And that's when we become hangry.
Yeah, for sure. Because I feel like with checking in with yourself, you know, you're always constantly like figuring out what you need. And if you're able to take care of those needs over time, opposed to letting stuff pile up, you can avoid those outbursts or suppressing those emotions. And, checking in with yourself, it can decrease mood swings, decrease depression, anxiety, all of those feelings of feeling like very overwhelmed.
Mhm. It makes me think about what I see a lot in the therapy room and like why people are coming to therapy. And it's so funny because so many times I hear, oh, I was just having all these headaches, or I kept having stomach aches, or my back was hurting, or my hips felt so tight and I thought something was wrong with me, or there was so much tension in my neck and or things like that. And they go to their primary care doctor, they go to the massage therapist, they go to their chiropractor trying to fix their body because their body is like something is wrong and it's trying to get your attention. And then like you go to the doctor and the doctor looks at you, you're fine, nothing medical is going on here. And then like the massage therapist or the chiropractor, they're usually really good about sending people to therapists because they're like, no, you're really tight here and you're really tense here, or you have this going on, and maybe you need to check in with yourself and make sure that you're kind of taking care of those stressors, or go and talk to somebody. And so a lot of times people come into the therapy space after going to go see some other professional about aches and pains in their body because their body is trying to communicate with you. A lot of times your mind does it. Your mind is like you're stressed and you're worried, and it starts bringing up all these emotions. But instead of you paying attention to those emotions, you just push them down into your body, and so your body's like, okay, fine. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to act up. The body's going to act up so that you go and do something. And that's where a lot of people will end up in therapy, is because they've gone through, their body acts up, they've gone through all the testing for physical problems, and then it's like, no, you probably need to go talk to somebody.
Yeah, for sure. And I think about, when people are living too far in the future or too far in the past, with checking in with yourself, checking in with your body, it really brings you into the present moment of what's really important right now, what can I truly control, and what's outside of my control. So
Mm,
I think one of the biggest benefits is really bringing you to the here and now.
yeah. And I think about like when we walk people through like, body scans or being able to kind of check in with like, oh, you have some tightness in your shoulders or you have tightness in your chest, and being able to really pay attention to that and what's going on. And then it's like, okay, what's going on that's creating this tension up here, and how can I relax myself? Or I'm having these headaches, and it's like, what's going on in my environment that could be triggering to me having these headaches. And so it's just, when we start paying attention to, we'll start seeing all the areas where we hold tension. Some people will hold tension in their wrists, some people hold tension in their hips, and it's different for everybody. And you just kind of have to check and see. And it's like, did you realize that your fists were clenched this whole time? You know, what is that about? What emotions are being brought up with that? Are we feeling a sense of anger or frustration or not having control, and we're just trying to hold on to some little bit of control?
Exactly. Because I think sometimes when you're trying to hold on to that control, it can create more resistance in the body. One thing I think that is helpful is having conversations with your body. I know it might sound a little silly, but asking your body, like, hey, how are you feeling? What do you need? Are we tense today? Do we need an Epsom salt bath? So, really, like, intentionally having a conversation with your body can really help you check in with yourself and connect with your internal world.
It reminds me of, I was talking to a friend, and they were telling me about like their ER visit, and they were saying how they were getting IV fluids, and they were like, "Why am I getting IV fluids?" And I was like, because most of the time we're dehydrated. And a lot of times people come into the ER and they're dehydrated, and it's like the first step a lot of times is just giving us some fluids, and that fluids can kind of change a lot of what's going on within our bodies. And so being able to kind of pay attention to and check in with your body and be like, is my mouth feeling dry? Is my body moving the way that it's supposed to? Are my joints well lubricated or things like that? Am I feeling really bloated? Am I sweating appropriately? Like whenever I go outside, and all those things become indicators of like dehydration. And and our body needs water, and being able to make sure that we are fully hydrated, but we have to kind of check in with ourselves to even recognize if there's like an absence or a lack of water within our bodies.
And you just highlighted on a good point with our bodies needing movement, whether we're working out, stretching. I think that really allows like the energy just to flow through. And with the energies are the emotions too. If you're feeling tense, if you're feeling not very flexible, it's like stretch. You know,
Mhm,
feel your body before you get up in the morning and just stretch it out.
mhm. And one of the things I noticed a lot with the anxiety that I have, and also with already knowing about my heart chakra and it being closed, is I was going through this training, and it was talking about like ways of just kind of paying attention to that tightness, and then being able to do like assisted like yoga moves to be able to open up that chest cavity. And just something as simple as like laying back on some pillows and just spreading your arms to the side, it kind of opens up that space and allows you to kind of like feel again. And when we feel again, we're able to kind of connect to those emotions that we have been pushing down. And so something as simple as just holding that pose can release all of these emotions that we're having.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds like that would really get your body in tune. I also find that sometimes people will be confused or have some type of uncertainty, like about a decision. And a lot of times, the answer is within inside you. If you're able to like connect with your body, then it can provide you with some type of confirmation if you should move forward or go left or go right.
One of the things I think about when you talk about like your body giving you that confirmation and being able to make decisions, I think about years and years ago. And so this had to be now like 18 years ago. I was driving down down the highway. It was late at night. I was coming from my then boyfriend's house, and I was probably a good like 3 months pregnant at that time. And I just remember my body was like, I felt like this pressure on me, and it was like a pulling back kind of thing. And I was like, I don't know what it is or what's going on, but I started to slow down. And so it was also raining during this time. And I slowed down. And when I slowed down, this car came from behind me, sped off, and then hit a puddle of water, spun out of control, and smashed into this other car. And I was like, that car was supposed to be me. And that's why my body was telling me to slow it down. And so I felt that pull on my body. It was like a whole kind of pull on my body, pulling my car back, whole thing. And it's like in that moment, I didn't know what it was, but I listened. And I'm thankful that I listened, because I was like, if that had been me in that accident at 3 months pregnant, I probably would have lost my child. And so I was able to kind of slow it down, quickly navigate around the situation. Like that adrenaline popped in, and it was like able to navigate around the situation. And then I was like, I was okay. And the pressure to slow down, it went away. And I was like, okay, now just breathe. It's okay now. And so we kind of have to really pay attention to, those signals, because our body will tell us so many things. We'll get all of these messages, but a lot of times we kind of just push them away.
Yeah, and to add to your story, I feel like you being connected with your body in that moment, you were listening to your intuition, you were listening to your inner voice. And if we're in that mode of, you know, pushing ourselves to the limit, we may not hear that voice because it's very, very low. And thankfully you were able to hear that voice and you were able to make that decision to slow down so you didn't have to experience that car
Mm.
accident.
Yeah. And I think about also how, like, our body wants us to work together with our mind and our spirit. It wants everything to be in alignment. And so when it's showing all these elements, it's not because it wants to be sick, it wants something to kind of happen. It makes me think about, like the cartoons that we see where like the island needs to heal or things like that. And it's like they'll start sending up like all of this, okay, the trees are dying or the water's not flowing, or all these messages to say like, hey, help me. And that's what your body does so much of, is like, hey, help me, something's not right. And we have to pay attention to it.
Yeah, for sure. One exercise that I like to give my clients a lot of times is in the morning, like check in with yourself and check in like where your energetic bandwidth is. Like, do you feel like you have a lot of energy to like take on the day? Do you feel like, you're kind of lacking energy from the day before? Because it's really going to allow you to really take control of your day and set intentions on how you really want to use your energy that day. If you don't have energy to push through that day, then don't.
Hmm. Yeah. That kind of reminds me of also what I tell people later on. So, not even like when you're starting off the day, but even as you're going through the day, and it's like, do I want to use my energy for this? Oh, this person is bothering me. Do I want to use my energy to kind of fight with them, or do I want to protect that? Because what's going to happen is that I'm going to have to deal with my exhausted body because I use my energy that way. And so at the end of the night, when you are restless, or your body's aching, or all those things, and it's like, well, how much of your energy did you use for things that you shouldn't have been using? And now your body had to pay the price for it. And so really, not just the let's check in with myself in the morning, but continuing to check in with myself throughout the day to make sure that I'm using my energy appropriately, so my body doesn't end up paying the price for it later on.
For sure, because your energy and your body is so precious. And I always think about, how do, other people's energy affect me? Am I giving away my power? Do I want to allow access, from different people or outside sources? And it really makes me think about this exercise of utilizing gratitude daily to be grateful for your body, like different body parts. And, you know, being grateful for your body, being grateful for your energy can increase your self love. It can increase your confidence and just how you feel about yourself. And, thinking about your energy as energy levels, can encourage you to protect your energy and something that's very precious.
That makes me think about how mean we are to our bodies, and the things that we do to it, and the way that we talk to it. And it's like this whole kind of this, you're too fat, or you're too slow, or well, why can't you paint this beautiful picture, or we're very negative towards our bodies. And it's like, would you talk to a child the way that you talk to your body? And why wouldn't you? Because you don't want to hurt that child. You don't want that child developing all these negative thoughts about themselves. But you're doing that same thing. You're kind of reinforcing all that negativity towards yourself, and it's interfering with things like your mental functioning, your cognitive functioning. It's interfering with your health and how you kind of navigate through life. And so we really have to kind of check in and make sure that we're not giving ourselves all that negative messaging and causing a breakdown of our own bodies.
Of course. And I think it's really important, if you are dealing with, um, the way that you look, or if you don't like something about yourself or your body, really think about and self reflect, are those beliefs or thoughts your own? Or did you have a parent or a caregiver growing up, put those things on you? You're overweight. Like, do you feel that you're overweight? And I think that's really important to really release any type of limiting beliefs when it comes to your body, and see if it stems from like your own thought, or did it kind of come from someone else in your life.
Yeah. And when I think about like how words and things like impact our bodies, it makes me think about the water in our bodies and how that's impacted by different like frequencies and different words and things like that. And it's actually been studied, but it also makes me think about most recently one of the things that I've seen on TikTok, and I'm not going to go into like names and things like that. I'm just going to kind of give a overview. I don't want to get locked caught up in anything legal, but there was this woman who has posted all of these videos of the negative language that her husband was using against her and her children. And it was video after video of him throwing these tantrums and being so negative and hateful towards her. And so she was constantly hearing all of this negativity, and all this negativity was impacting her. And what we saw was later on, we find out that she ended up with terminal cancer. And it made me think about, yeah, when our bodies are like 70% water, and the studies show that how water can have be easily impacted by words or frequencies. If this person is constantly hearing all of these negative words, it's going to have a negative impact on their body's functioning.
For sure. And that almost makes me think about where energy goes, energy flows. And for that young lady that was experiencing that, it sounds like the energy was manifesting on a low vibration, and it could create blockages and manifest illnesses in your body, and ultimately just make things much worse. So your thoughts and how you're treating your body and what you're allowing into your space energetically is like really powerful.
Yeah. And so, going back into like the study, because I didn't really explain it very well, what they had did with it was they took like clear glasses of water, and they put like a negative word under one and like a positive word under the other. And what they saw was that like with the glass of water that had the positive word underneath it, it had like this beautiful molecular structures, like kind of crystallized, very beautiful. And then like the water that had the negative word, it was like all slimy and mold growing and things like that when you looked at it under a microscope. And so if you can imagine like what she had been going through, or what we go through when we're constantly delivering ourselves these negative messages, or when other people are delivering us these negative messages, our body is just kind of like mutating, either like, and it's showing up either in the form of illnesses or body aches, and then it can progress into our mental health issues, which eventually can lead to things such as self-destructive behaviors or self-harm, and even as far as suicide, which we saw with the lady in the video that I was talking to. She underwent assisted suicide in order to kind of stop all of that for herself. And I just think about like how much her life could have been different if there was more positivity being spoken around her.
And you brought up a really good point with the study of, how important your words are. I don't think people understand that words are so important. A lot of times I like to explain words as like a magical spell, and your words have so much power. So be very careful with how you use your magic. And I think if people really took their words very literal, people probably wouldn't talk to themselves so destructively.
Mhm. It kind of reminds me. So I can be very petty and I can be very harsh with people. And so whenever somebody is like trying me, I always say, "Are you sure you want to keep going? Because I can make you cry." And they're like, "What?" I was like, "I can make you cry." And so I know the power of my words and I know those things that could really like break a person down. And so I always give a person an out because I was like, I know way too much about you that I could cause some serious harm that you're going to spin around in your head for days or weeks or months or even stick with you for the rest of your life. And every time you go through this similar situation or you think about me, you're going to be broken down a little bit. And so I think about that when you say like the power of our words and like our magic, and I was like, I'm gonna cast a spell on you and I'm just gonna destroy it all for you. So be careful of how you kind of proceed with me.
And I think also to your point with you casting a spell, I think people should also acknowledge and be aware of is that even if people are casting spells on you, you have the power to either repel the spell or accept the spell or just disengage with the spell. So everybody has power with their words, and just remembering not to let your power go.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Skeleton Key, and don't ask me to summarize what the movie was about. But one of the things that I always remembered was that they would say that it can't impact you if you don't believe.
Hmm.
And so it's just like what you were saying is like you can cast away whatever spell is being placed on you. If you don't hold that as part of your core belief, then it's not going to impact you. And so being able to like, okay, I received it, but now I'm going to push it out. I'm not going to own that.
For sure. So I have a little bit of a story. Sometimes I get clients that will want me to interpret dreams, and I will connect with my guides. And a lot of times, certain dreams that come up are very superstitious, like fish for pregnancy. Just certain things are pretty universal. So basically, the dream was um, someone came to someone's door and placed dirt from someone's grave. So instantly, when I heard the dream, it didn't feel too good. But then I stopped myself and I was like, whoa, how does this feel? And in the dream, the home where the dirt was put was protected. It was lit up, ancestors, spiritual energy protecting it. It was the person putting the dirt, the person interpreting the dream, was dealing with like a lot of heavy energy, projecting. And it really wasn't about the person that they were telling the dream to. So I guess my point in telling this story is, even though that there are universal superstitions or universal truth or knowledge, it's all in how you interpret things. It's all in how you see things through your internal lens. Going back to checking in with yourself, someone can tell you something really quick and it's like, oh, that's a bad omen. But then when I interpreted the dream, it was like you're protected. No one can touch you. So it's really important to really check in with yourself and just not take on that universal knowledge or acceptance of certain situations.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things I really like about being a therapist is how many times people come in and they're like, let me run this by you. And it's like because they have interpreted something a certain way, somebody's behavior or what happened at their job or whatever it may be. And now they're spiraling and they're like, let me run this by you. And I was like, well, that's not what I heard, or that's not what I see in that situation. And being able to provide that different perspective to them, they're like, oh, I didn't think about it that way.
And just to assist them with finding a perspective that empowers them and like takes back their power is so like freeing and releasing.
Yeah.
It's at first it's all doom and gloom, but then when you share a perspective shift, it's like, oh my gosh, it really wasn't that bad.
Mhm. And then once they get that perspective shift and they're able to say that it wasn't that bad, what happens is all that tension from their body is released. And it's like, okay, I'm okay now. And so being able to kind of train people or help people with being able to see things from all these different perspectives and knowing, or as we call it, reframing, so that we know that, things are not always as we may have initially perceived. And so we don't have to hold all that negativity in our bodies because we're seeing something a certain way. There are other options, and it's nice when there's other options. We always like, even I think about food, and it's like, oh, we could have this food, or we could have this one and this one and this one. And it's like, oh, this is great that we have all these different options, and so we don't have to go with, oh, I really don't like that type of food. I have all these other choices. And so if you don't like that perspective, you have all these other choices or ways that you can see something that will have a more positive impact on your body.
So just to wrap this up with a bow, I read a quote online. I'm not sure who it's from, but it was basically saying that self-care is giving the world the best of you instead of what's left of you. So it's really important to check in with your body to see what you need, so you're not pouring from an empty cup. Um, just so you're not giving the world what's left of you. You know, majority of you should be for you, so then you can pour into other people's cups, not the other way around.